Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So if you've ever flown a DJI drone before, like the new Lito X1, you've probably heard of the term home point, especially when you're using the return to home function. But exactly what is home point, and more importantly, what is the dynamic home point function you've now got on the Lito X1? So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking it down in simple, practical terms, exactly what this is, and show you how you can fly safer, smarter, and with more confidence. So if it's your first time here, my name is Andrew. Thanks for joining me. If it's not your first time here, you know it's Andrew. If you could do the like, subscribe, notification bell and the hype, that would be greatly appreciated. And then I'll crack on with exactly what home point is. So a home point on the drone is the exact GPS location as your drone records it as a sort of return address. And it's usually marked on your controller with a yellow H. So this means that when you launch your drone, it's going to drop a signal pin onto your controller, and that's going to mark the home point. And the drone's going to use that for things like return to home, when there's a low battery, using the auto run, or if there's a signal failure loss. So that simply means that if something goes wrong, your drone knows exactly where to come back to. So when you switch on your Lito 1 or X1, the drone's going to automatically lock onto the GPS satellites, and you're going to hear a prompt such as home point updated, please check it on the map.
Home point updated.
And I would say that you should always check the home point just before you take off, because if the GPS is weak or more importantly inaccurate, then your drone could return to the wrong location and then you run the risk of losing the drone. So if you go into the map, straight away you can see where you've got that H or the home point. Now what I would suggest you do is if you click on the bottom icon on the left hand side, that's going to bring you up the option to change the way that the map looks. And I would recommend really that you go over to mixed, because if you go over to mixed, it's going to give you the satellite as well as the topographical map, and this means you're going to have more information, because you may have something in the area which doesn't appear on the basic map, but you'll be able to see it on the aerial satellite map. Now also, when you're using the home point, there are a few things that you need to do just to ensure the safety of the drone. So the first one is if you click on the three dots in the top right, that's going to take you into the safety settings, and if you scroll down you can see advanced safety settings. Now from this, you've got three options of what you want the drone to do should you suffer a signal loss. The first one is going to be return to home, the second one is descend, and the third one is hover. Now I wouldn't bother with the second or third one, basically because if you do lose signal and the drone is programmed to descend or to hover, you don't know where the drone is. It could be over the water here. It's just going to either descend into the water, or it's going to hover until the battery runs out, and then it's got to descend. So you always do run the risk of potentially losing the drone if you have it to either of those options. So I would always recommend having the signal loss function set to return to home. So the next thing you want to look at as well, which is going to be the safety, and that's your return to home height. I would again set this depending on your environment. So you need to set it, say, about 10 meters, 33 feet above the tallest thing in the area. So if you've got a tree which is, say, 20 meters, you want to set that to 30 meters just to make sure that when the drone does come back, it's not going to run into any problems. Now you'll also see an option there for advanced return to home, and that's going to give you two options, one being optimal and one being preset. Now they do work in very different ways. I'm just going to leave it in preset because that's going to be easier for you to see when it comes to doing the screen records. But if you want to know more about it, there is going to be a video up here in the next couple of days going through all the differences there are between preset and optimal. Now on the screen you do have the little yellow H, as I said, which marks the home point, and that's great if you're staying in one place. But it could be that you want to walk from one place to another, and if the drone runs into any issues, you don't want the drone coming back to where it took off. So you are able to actually move the home point from one place to another. Now you have got some options available to you when it comes to the home point. The first one is the fact that you can pick a predetermined point for the home point to be. So when the drone's in the air, there are a number of things you can do to change the home point. So you need to go into the settings and then select the update home point, and that's going to bring you a map. Now on the map, you can then drag the home point to whatever location you want it to be, and then that's going to change the home point from the original one to the new one, and you're going to get a line between the two. You click on OK, and then the drone is going to reg that as a new home point, and then should you initiate any of the return to home features, then the drone's going to go automatically to that point. So this is great if, for example, you walk in from one point to another and you want the drone to be at the second point should anything go wrong. So you can just set it to your destination, have the drone fly around, do whatever it's doing, and then should the worst happen, you know the drone is going to go safely back to that location. It's not going to come back to the original home point. So if I initiate return to home now,
Return to home.
so you can see now that the drone has flown away from me to that new home point, a couple of hundred meters away. Now the other option you've got is to set the home point depending on where the controller is. Now at the moment the drone's a couple of hundred meters away, but that's no good as being the home point. I wanted to come back to me. So again, I can just go into the settings, go to update home point, and this time I'm going to select controller. And then once I click on OK, you can see that the home point has been updated successfully. And this time, if I go back onto the map, I click on the return to home.
Return to home.
And you can see that the drone is coming back to me. Then the other option you've got is to actually set the home point to the position of the drone. So again, you just go into the settings, and this time you can see on the screen you've got aircraft, and then you just need to select that, and then that's going to update the home point to the current location of the drone. So again, it works in exactly the same way as using the controller, but this time you're using the actual drone as the location for the home point being marked rather than the controller. And obviously, if you want to change it, then it's just a matter of updating the location to the controller, and the drone's going to come back to wherever you are. So that's the basic home points when you're using static. And before I go on to the dynamic home. And before I go on to the dynamic home point, if you are finding it useful, if you could do the like, subscribe, notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. There's also an option there for buy me a coffee, and any funds I get from that, I'm going to jump on an airplane and go somewhere where there's not some house alarm going off. Now, when it comes to the dynamic home point, basically all it means is that when the drone's in the air, the location of the home point is going to be updated every couple of seconds based on the location of the controller. And this is useful for things, for example, if you're on a boat or you're in a car, anything where you're moving and you want the drone to track you, set it to the dynamic home point. It's going to change from a yellow icon to a blue one, so you know that that's the mode you're in, and then the home point's going to automatically be updated wherever the controller is. So when you are using the dynamic home point, really you should use it with something like the Active Track 360. So if you're walking, biking or in a car, because then the drone's going to have an updated home point automatically every few seconds from the controller. But you can use it in normal mode if you want to, in which case the home point is still going to be updated, but the drone could be just remain in a static place. But then when you finish, it's just going to come back to wherever you are. So you can see as I'm walking about, it's following me, but the home point is also being updated as I walk around. And then on the left hand side of the screen, you can see you've got the blue icon just to show that the dynamic home point is working. One more thing you need to remember with dynamic return to home is that when the drone does actually come back to you, it's not going to land. It's going to hover in place until you use the controller to actually bring it down to the ground. And this is just a bit of a safety feature, so that if anything is underneath the drone, it's not going to crash. It's just going to hover there until you tell it that it's safe to actually land. Okay, so that's dynamic home point. I hope you've learned something. If you did find the video useful, if you could do the like, subscribe, notification bell and the hype. If there's any questions you've got in relation to the Lito 1 or the X1, the Mini 4 Pro, the Mini 5 Pro, the Neo 1 or 2, the Hover X1 Pro or Pro Max, or any of the Potensic drones, also let me know in the comments below. There's also, as I said earlier, an option there for buy me a coffee, and then maybe you can go somewhere where you haven't got with a house alarm going off. So thanks for watching, and diolch yn fawr, and I'll catch you again in a few days. Bye.